With the emergence of I think we have a challenge to not fall into bad habits when it comes to acquiring insights and knowledge, especially when inspired by other people. And, this isn't necessarily something new. We always had book summaries that were available, and there were even services that would give you like 10 books a week in 7 minutes, right? Where they would just discuss books and their core message in a couple of minutes. And now with artificial intelligence, it's extremely easy and very enticing to take, let's say, a long article, or maybe a book, or perhaps a video on YouTube, and just give the URL to some AI agent and say, please let me know the main points that are being made and the insight that are being discussed. And that's all well and good. And if you just want to know if perhaps this article, book, or video or podcast is interesting for you by just checking out the points that are being made and whether or not those points are something you are interested in, then that's fine and well. And if you have to make a book report for school, I completely understand that you don't want to read the whole thing. You just want to get the info that will get you the passing grade. But when it comes to taking information in yourself and maybe being inspired by other people and trying to figure things out and having insights, this is not the way. You see, when it comes to consuming media, especially when you're interested in the subject and you're listening to someone or you're reading someone who can talk about this in a good way, offers you different perspectives and perhaps even challenges your own, then what you need is time and space. What you need is the time it takes not to just consume that media, but the engagement with the media, right? If you are listening to, let's say, a podcast that takes an hour, this 1 hour isn't just 1 hour of information being transferred into your brain. And since they're only making a couple of points in that hour that are really worth remembering, then wouldn't it be so much better if you could just get those points in 20 seconds or have a list where it says, the speaker talk about this, this, and this is what they say? Well, no, because what happens is while you are listening to this interview or this podcast or whatever format it has, you are engaging yourself. You are offering new ideas to yourself, and you are processing those ideas, and you're integrating those ideas, and you're coming up with your own ideas, and you're adding stuff to it that maybe you thought about earlier in the day, the week, or the year, right? So when you are consuming this content, it becomes this symbiotic process where you're synthesizing what someone is saying and making it your own. And not exactly what that person is saying, but what you think about it, or who knows, right? This isn't necessarily a conscious process where you're like, well, let me synthesize this information. What you're doing is you're exposing yourself, having yourself being impressed with all kinds of ideas, adding your own things while you're at it, and then something will stick, some new idea will form, some residue will remain of that process. But this process is a two-way street. It's a two-way thing. It's not just you listening to stuff. It's you engaging with stuff. It's you altering what comes in and adapting and changing. And that process is a very valuable process, especially when you're paying attention to someone you find interesting. What happens there is magic within you. It isn't about what the other person is saying so much. That's just the stuff that you get inspired by. What happens within you, that's the value you get from that podcast, article, movie, book, or whatever. So please stop thinking that the value of someone giving her perspective or opinion is just like the list of things that are discussed and the points that are being made. Those are flat and dead lists. You want to have life in those things. And life is within you. And if you take those things within you, you will infuse them with life, with your energy, and they will become your own. You can never make ideas your own if you don't spend time with them. And it's very difficult to see the value of ideas if you get them without context. So if you just get a list of these 5 items were discussed and these points were made per item, it means nothing. It's like watching a show on Netflix that didn't really register, and then you move on to the next. It's just all that happened was you were distracted for a little bit. And that's what happens when you're reading AI summaries or asking AI to summarize, whatever medium or media. Now, I do agree that there's a lot of stuff out there, and a lot of it is not necessarily good, and a lot of it has like only sparse information or only incidental interesting stuff. And so that's a challenge. Now, you could use AI to see if there will be interesting stuff within the media you are consuming. However, I would just urge you to find more interesting people that always give something in every response or, sentence they offer. If someone has a really nice and interesting perspective on things, then they will reflect that interesting stuff in everything they say. And the reason, for me personally, I find those people interesting is because they look at things in a different way than that's, usually how people look, or maybe it's different than the way I look. So if I listen to them, every word, every detail, every sentence, the way they say the sentence, the way they emphasize the words, whatever, is information to me. It's something I can look at and think about and go to work at to figure out, okay, how come they can say these things? Where are they? How are they looking? What are they thinking? What have they experienced? So if I'm listening to an interview of someone who I find interesting, talk about something that is interesting to me, then that hour is just like a magical hour of me swimming through all these ideas and all these insights and all these concepts and perspectives. And I wouldn't offer that up for the world. And I do find that if I ask AI to summarize, let's say, the interview I just listened to, then what the output is sure, it's a summary of what was discussed, but the value in it is like almost zero. There's no life, there's no depth, there's nothing there for me to integrate within myself. And that is the point when you're trying to be inspired or have insights. It happens within you, not in the other person. So be careful how you think you can consume information or insights or perspectives. You need to do the work. There are no shortcuts here. So good luck with that.